Matthew chapter 25, 14 through 30 talks about the talents. And I find that part of Matthew, the 25th chapter, to be so powerful because I believe that each and every one of us are endowed with gifts and talents to serve the Lord. There are a lot of gifts and talents that we have in the body of Christ. There's no need for us to be hating on one another and being jealous and coveting one another's talents, because if we take care of our own, there will be enough work in God's vineyard. So there you have it. It talks of God, a man, and we know that it is God, is going out and he gives out talents. And let's, for the sake of more simplicity, we say that a man goes out and there's Mr. Gilliam, there's Mr. Johnson, and there's Mr. Smith. And to Mr. Gilliam, he gives 5 talents. And to Mr. Smith, he gives 2 talents. And then you have to Mr. Johnson, he gives 1 talent. And then he tells him, I'm going off on a vacation, and I want you to take these talents, but let's just call them dollars or rand. And I'm going to go off to a far off land, and I want to know what you're going to do with the monies that I have given you. Whether it's rand or whether it's dollars, think of talents as money. And so the boss goes way off to a far off country. So Mr. Gilliam, who received the 5 talents, goes out and he uses those 5 talents or 5 rand, and he doubles it. He doubles it. He increases it. And he goes out and he inspires others, and he is so happy that the 5 talents or rand that he received is now 10 rand. 10 talents. And so likewise, Mr. Smith, who had the 2 talents, 2 rand, instead of thinking to himself, how come the boss didn't give me 5 rand or 5 talents? He didn't waste his time wondering and thinking and being jealous or envious. He took what he had and he invested it. And now that 2 became 4. And he was so happy, for he even looked at the model that Mr. Gilliam used to increase what he was given. His heart was right, his heart was opened, and 2 became 4. But now, Mr. Johnson, yes, Mr. Johnson, that 1 talent or 1 rand, he looked at it and he thought, you know what? Why did the boss give me 1? I'm more talented. I do more work than Mr. Gilliam. I do more work than Mr. Smith. And then he had the nerve to go around to all his co-workers trying to tell them, don't you think that I should have been given 5 rand, 2 rand? I was only given 1. And the more Mr. Johnson complained, the more time elapsed. So Mr. Johnson ended up complaining and taking that 1 rand or 1 talent and keeping it in a safe in his home, refusing to invest it because he felt that he was mistreated and not respected enough by the boss to be given 5 rand or 2 rand. And so as time would have it, the boss comes back, the employer comes back, and he calls a meeting and calls all 3 men into his office. And to Mr. Gilliam, he says, Mr. Gilliam, I see that I have given you 5 rand, 5 talents, and I want to know, what have you done with the monies that I have given you? Mr. Gilliam said, first of all, I just want to thank you for trusting me enough to invest in me by giving me 5 rand, 5 talents. I went out and I was so happy, and I have invested your money and I've doubled it. So now the 5 rand of talents is now 10. And the boss was so overjoyed and happy and said, "Well done, thou good and faithful servant. Thou hast been faithful over a few things, but I will make thee ruler over many things. I've got a new position for you with your name on the door, and you have a 2-week vacation before you begin, and you have a pay increase. Welcome. Go into your new office." So he told Mr. Smith. He asked him, "What did you do with the 2 talents that I gave you?" And Mr. Smith, just like Mr. Gilliam, said the same thing. "I was not envious. Other folk, even on the job, said, 'Don't you think that the boss should have given you the 5 talents?' He said, 'It's not about what I was given. It's about what I produce from what I was given.' So I didn't worry about how much he gave me in the beginning. For whatever he gave me, I knew I was going to invest it and make him proud of me. So I went, and sir, I invested your money. And what you gave me was 2. I've increased it to 4. And the employer said the same thing. 'Well done, thou good and faithful servant. You've been faithful over a few things, but I will make thee ruler over many. Enter thou into your new office. You have a pay increase. Your name is on the door. And your pay increase is the same as Mr. Gilliam. Because it wasn't about how much I gave you. What was most important was your obedience in what you produced to give back. So your same rate of salary and vacation is the same as Mr. Gilliam, who produced double. Thank you." So then he looked at Mr. Johnson. "Mr. Johnson, what did you do with the talent or the rand that I gave you?" And all Mr. Johnson did was accuse and blame the boss. "Why didn't you give me the money you gave Mr. Gilliam or Mr. Smith? You don't think I was this? I went to everyone," and all he did was complain. And the employer just looked at him and said, "What did you do with the talent that I gave you?" And he said, "Well, I just kept it because I wanted to give it back to you and let you know I didn't like the fact that you didn't give me enough as Mr. Gilliam and Mr. Smith. So here you go." And he said, "This is not what I wanted. You didn't invest my money, so you no longer work here." And he asked security to take him out. What this story does, it tells us that each and every one of us are endowed with gifts and talents for the Lord. And we are mandated to use those gifts to the best of our abilities. If you have the talent to smile, you better be out there smiling as best as you can. If you have the talent to sing, if you have the talent to cook, if you have the talent to preach, whatever talent God has given you, you've got to use to the glory of God, and he will bless you with more. Be your best at what God has given you, and who knows, he may even give you more. That reminds me of a speech that Dr. King once said when he was speaking to a group of black Americans in 1967. He was speaking to them and talking to them and letting them know that the doors of opportunity were about to be opened for the first time to the Negroes, as black people were called back then in America. Those opportunities had never been available for the black man before, up until that time. And Dr. King saw that the doors of opportunity were about to open, and he was trying to let the congregation know there's a way that you enter properly through those doors. So he relayed a story about his now deceased daughter, Yolanda, who they affectionately called Yoki. She was 7 years old. And he told them that they were watching a commercial, a television program, and then a commercial came on advertising Funtown, which was an amusement park there in Atlanta in 1967. But Funtown did not admit black people. So when the commercial came on, Yolanda said, "Ooh, Daddy, I want to go to Funtown." And he looked at her sadly and said, "Yoki, Negroes aren't allowed into Funtown." And then he said that his daughter started to cry. And he thought that as a father, I can't even fix this problem for my daughter. So he felt helpless. So he rushed on to say, "Yoki, if it costs me my life, I will make sure you or any of God's people will be able to go to Funtown or anytime." So he went back to the congregation and said, "Whatever God gives you to do in life, be your best." You want to know how he said it? This is how he said it. "The greatest challenge that we face is to be ready to enter these doors when they open." Ralph Waldo Emerson said in a lecture back in 1871, "If a man can write a better book, preach a better sermon, or make a better mousetrap than his neighbor, even as he builds his house in the woods, the world will make a beaten path to his door. This will become increasingly true. That means we're gonna have to work hard. We're gonna have to learn to burn the midnight oil sometime. Take advantages of new opportunities. We must not seek merely to do a good Negro job if you are setting out to be merely a good Negro doctor, or a good Negro lawyer, or a good Negro preacher, or a good Negro teacher, or a good Negro barber, or a good Negro skilled laborer, or a good Negro beautician. Then you have already flunked your matriculation exam for entrance into the University of Integration. We must get ready. We must set out to do our life's work so well that nobody can do it better. We must set out to do a good job, and to do that job so well that the living, the dead, or the unborn couldn't do it better. I've said so often, if it falls your lot to be a street sweeper, go on out and sweep streets like Michelangelo carved marble. Sweep streets like Raphael painted pictures. Sweep streets like Beethoven composed music, and like Shakespeare wrote poetry. Sweep streets so well that all the host of heaven and earth will have to pause and say, "Here lived the world's best street sweeper who swept his job well." This is it. Oh, if you can't be a pine on the top of it, be a shrub in the valley, but be the best little shrub on the side of that field. Can't be a tree, then be a bush. Can't be a highway, just be a trail. If you can't be the sun, be a star. For it isn't by size that you win or you fail. Be the best at whatever you are. God bless you.